Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, May 7th, 2025, and today we're going to talk about cold sowing, about pitfalls of starting gardens quickly, and about the ecological side, both positive and negative, of tarping the soil. So let's do it. All right, well, welcome to the midweek, everyone. I think that's what we call it. We are halfway there, wherever there is, so that's fun. I officially got our sweet potatoes in the ground yesterday, which is always an exciting time. I'm not the most excited about that piece of ground for the wetness. It's just like the wettest part of our farm, but the soil is nice, and if it's a dry summer, that will work in our favor, in theory. Also, because I'm using this new slip method where the slips are incredibly small and don't really have roots on them, I also covered them with shade cloth just to see them through the establishment phase. I also transplanted some broom corn into one of the beds, like right down the middle, and sowed some popcorn in two of the others because, well, at least for the corn, that's a pairing that has worked well for us in the past, in a wetter year at least. So hoping that goes well again in our favor. It's not necessarily one I'm recommending, it's just one I'm doing because that's how I roll. But that ground was partially prepared by summer cover crops last year and then tarped over the winter, effectively just pull the tarps and rake and then plant. That's how I usually do it. And we've been using tarps to prepare the soil for sweet potatoes and to manage weeds and hold soil in place for many years at this point. For sure, there are a lot of negative things one could say about using tarps on soil. Unquestionably, it's a ton of plastic and may shed some microplastics among other risk factors that we'll discuss. But if there is a plus side, and to some of you, this will definitely not come off as a plus side, it's that there are a few beneficial creatures that absolutely adore our tarps. Frogs and toads often take up residence on or around our tarps. Some spiders, many ants, which I used to appreciate but have recently become less fond of because they are ubiquitous. But perhaps most enthusiastic or abundant of all of them is the eastern garter snake. So let's start there. One of the main complaints or concerns people have with tarping is the moles and voles that may come along with it, which in my experience is somewhat true here in Kentucky and may even be more so in regions with heavier populations of ground rodents, affectionately referred to by no one as grodents, but it could be. The eastern garter snake, and to a lesser extent the eastern black snake, is a good friend to have around to manage rodent populations. They are non-venomous, smaller snakes that are somewhat opportunistic in their diets. Garters have been found to eat small fish if living nearby fisheries, so very opportunistic, but generally eat all sorts of pests from slugs and snails to grasshoppers, plus some good guys like earthworms or potentially less wanted worms like jumping worms, which we will discuss for an episode soon. But also they eat things like smaller rodents, some smaller snakes, and basically a lot of life that loves our crops and live near, on, or around our tarps. So in that way, tarps have, completely anecdotally, and this isn't necessarily promotional of them, but they have increased our populations, or at least sightings of garter snakes, which I generally view in its current state as a good thing, though more on that in a minute. On the negative ecological side, beyond microplastics and the like, is something that I learned recently. Shouts to Eric Nordell for sending it to me. A very interesting study covered in a webinar called Vegetable Production in No-Till Terminated Cover Crops, which discussed about, 21 minutes in, if you watch it, the loss of carbon dioxide under tarps versus not under tarps, and essentially found a greater increase in CO2 loss under the tarps, basically that CO2 could be wasted faster and more aggressively, perhaps because of the heat from the tarp, at least for a time, than other soil practices, including, interestingly enough, tillage in this study. CO2 coming from soil like that means that the soil is consuming carbon-based things like roots or other microbes or whatever, or in this case, obviously, like the cover crop residue, and it's being off-gassed. Then, with no plants above the soil to recapture that CO2, like in the carbon cycle, because of the giant tarp sitting there, it's just getting lost to the atmosphere, which isn't great. So using the tarps in the beginning to get, say, Bermuda grass in check is a really helpful use of the tarps that can help establish gardens for many years to come. Or using them to hold soil in place after an initial tillage event, or even using tarps to help with weeding plots that got neglected and got a little weedy, or even potentially just increasing some good guy ecology like the snakes. There are many potential positives, or at least helpful things they can do. However, those negatives like microplastics and plastic waste and even perhaps CO2 loss now are not great and also must be appreciated, recognized. Of course, it's not just the plastic though. On that like more ecological side, like the snake thing, it's possible that the populations that I'm enjoying now could actually get out of hand. And if they didn't have adequate food, these snakes, for their populations, they may start terrorizing baby birds or decreasing diversity of other species that I do want around, which, as much as I love me some snakes, would not be okay. I'm glad I got a good population of snakes rolling. Big fan. But I think, especially for us, we've been trying to do it for years, but moving away from giant plastics like this is definitely the right call for us now, especially when the CO2 loss is taken into consideration. That's your organic matter blowing away in gas form, plus the ecological imbalances it may create, plus the plastic waste, of course, all of it. Anyway, thoughts on ecology and tarping, anything that you've seen that's been interesting, let us know. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, pitfalls of starting a garden quickly, BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. I started a CSA to grow food and build community, not to drown in admin work. Spreadsheets, emails, and pack lists take up too much time. If I could spend less time at my desk and more in the field, that'd be a win. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand automates billing, newsletters, websites, and member support, saving CSA farmers 20 plus hours a week. Focus on farming, not paperwork. See how Farmhand can help. Book a one-on-one demo with founder Ari at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this content, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere the questions come in, but I'll always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Loke Nielsen, who writes, quote, "Hello, I just started listening to the episode about farming loneliness, and this podcast cures exactly that for me when I'm out working. I do my best work with company, but alone. Separate tasks. The daily show is like having a friend with me that doesn't question my decisions. Ha. Anyway, making friends is, as mentioned in that episode, hard as an adult. Being autistic, forming personal relationships, and nurturing them can be hard for me personally. I'm blessed to have my fiance and family fairly close and good neighbors. A lot of them seem to engage in the rural currency of goodwill. Buying a house with a near acre on the countryside in Sweden in September 2023, Zone 6B, and setting up a garden, beginning growing food has helped my mental health immensely and lets me make sense of a world that doesn't always fit me. Purpose and having goals you believe in is a powerful thing. I have plans to expand every year, and the first thing I did was put in a 8 by 3 meter polycarbonate tunnel. Then I made a few small beds with materials I could source. I'm spending as little as possible while getting some must-have infrastructure to grow on a decent scale. I've been tarping new ground, and hopefully with small means I can manage the weeds, but I always want more, so I will try to cheat and get more growing space than I have tarps. I'm trying all the fast ways I can find to see what works and fully expect to redo some of it. Can you think of any obvious pitfalls to avoid here? End quote. All right, awesome. So Loke actually had another question that I will save for the third segment, but let's just talk a bit about this idea of starting a fast garden and some of the risks there. I did cover this in a video that I will post in the show notes. I don't remember what it's called offhand about starting gardens, but I will post that in the show notes. So if you're curious kind of what some of these methods are, you can watch that. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about this idea of starting gardens fast. First, it isn't laid out what Loke is referring to specifically, which of those systems when they mention starting a garden fast. So it's hard to know what the specific pitfalls could be because each one could be a little different. But generally, when someone like myself talks about starting a garden quickly or fast, they are referring to tilling or flipping the soil in some fashion, like just getting it opened up quickly so that you can put plants in it. And to be sure, there are ways that you can do that have a garden ready to go in a matter of days, in theory. For instance, on a smaller scale, perhaps it's something like double digging, where you scoop the soil into a wheelbarrow, creating a large ditch. Then you move over and start digging another ditch, flipping that soil into the old ditch. When you get to the last ditch you want to dig, you replace it with the soil from the first ditch. Basically, a very labor-intensive way to till the soil, but effective on a small scale, or if you don't have a tiller for preparing the soil quickly. Or maybe you mow the soil really close to the ground and till over it a few times over the course of a week or so. Perhaps by fast, you mean just applying a ton of compost over top of some tightly mowed grass and then planting that into that soon thereafter. The tillage, either mechanical or double digging, your primary issue with with that is going to be weeds in the first season. Plus, anytime you mix a bunch of raw carbon into the soil, like plants and roots from the sod, the soil is going to need some time to digest that, several warm weeks preferably, at which point it would also be quite exposed, the soil, to erosion from wind and rain and all the things. With the compost approach, the issue is primarily that whatever the compost mulch is on top of will not be broken down. So the roots of whatever plants you place inside of that compost to grow will be running into rotting grass, which is maybe not the best. Moreover, depending on what is there, the grass or weeds may really enjoy the mulch and poke through. Always remember that time is an important amendment as well. Planning is its own amendment. If production is the goal, racing into production might actually hold you back from getting into production, or at least on the scale that it sounds like you want to shoot for. I would take your time and perhaps find more profitable ways or quicker ways to find cash flow, like microgreens or even oyster mushrooms, while you really get your gardens up and running. Those can be really quick, like within 4 to 6 weeks into production. So that can get you cash flow super fast. That also gives you more time to plan exactly what the garden would look like. Anyway, others may have additional advice, but I love the question and so glad the show can hang out with you every day. That's kind of the point of it. I'm glad to hear it's working, even out there in Sweden. I'm going to get out to Sweden one of these days. Sounds like a fun place. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll tackle Loke's other question, this one about cold sowing. Be right back. Today's episode is also brought to you by FarmRaise. Still using QuickBooks for your farm's bookkeeping? You're wasting time and losing money. Farm finances can be overwhelming, but they don't have to be. FarmRaise Tracks is the all-in-one tool built just for farmers. Manage expenses, prep for taxes, run payroll, and plan for the future without spreadsheets or stress. Just clear, organized insights to keep your operation thriving. Thousands of farmers trust Tracks to make smart financial decisions all year long. It's time you did too. Use code NOTIL20, that's all caps, no spaces, NOTIL20 for 20% off the life of your membership at farmraise.com. Today's episode of Growers Daily is also brought to you by Ring of Fire. What if you could turn your brush problem into black gold? The Ring of Fire biochar kiln is your spring tool for soil transformation, converting woody debris into high-quality biochar in just hours. Biochar will kickstart your compost, retain water and nutrients in your soil, and provide habitat for beneficial microbes. Now $19.95 with flat rate shipping. Their spring sale runs through June. Don't wait to boost your soil and optimize your inputs. Visit ringofire.earth/growers now to learn more. Also, for more information on biochar, check out the No-Till Market Garden podcast interview with Kelpie Wilson, inventor of the Ring of Fire kiln, that we will link in the show notes.
Stay away from that old Viper man. Don't you take that fruit he's holding in his hand. Just one bite and you'll be swinging with the band. If you hang around that old Viper man, if you should come across a viper in the night, that's when you get the hit that makes you feel alright.
All right, so we took on Loke's first question in that last segment, and this segment will take on the second question, which I did not read, but was, quote, another thing I've tried and that I'd love to hear your thoughts on is something I've seen from a few Swedish content creators they call cold sowing, which is exactly what it sounds like. You plop down seeds in the winter, be it in trays or the ground, and just let nature take its course. They'll cover it with snow if placed under cover or in a greenhouse to pre-water the sowings. According to them, it gives stronger, stockier plants, obviously with adjustments based on which vegetable. I've tried it with radish, carrot, parsnips, fava beans, peas, and then covered with fleece. Some of it is starting to poke up, and apart from potentially saving me a lot of time, it would actually produce hardier plants, end quote. All right, so interesting question. Now, some seeds, most of them cut flowers, do require long periods in cold weather, so that's like stratification. So the idea of sowing them in the winter makes sense. With most vegetables, that's not always the case. Garlic obviously is one that needs a good cold period. 40 days under 40 degrees to bulb up is the general rule. There are others like lettuce and spinach that require colder temperatures to germinate. I've sowed carrots. I always sow those in like January in our tunnel where it's warm and it's not getting snow or frosted or whatever. And we're harvesting those right now. Your peas and favas will probably love it as well. But by and large, it won't make a ton of sense to sow too much stuff in the winter. At least here, our big issue would be seed predators. Birds and underground critters and mice would all be psyched if you sowed seeds in the winter. Here, even, yes, under like snow. If it's snowing, it doesn't always snow, but it snows sometimes. Now, sowing in the winter may help prime your seeds, but you may also lose seeds in the process, just to, like I said, seed predators or whatever. Plus, you can just prime them yourself, and I'll link a video to that in the show notes. There may be some exceptions, of course, and flowers are a different story, one outside of my realm of knowledge, really. I can slay some zinnias and cosmos and sunflowers, but beyond that, flowers are not really my strong suit. Of course, if you see some really knowledgeable growers there in Sweden using some specific winter sowing techniques, then just forget everything I said and listen to them. Try it out and let us know how it went, because every context is different, and there may actually be, just based on your sunlight and conditions and whatever else in the seeds you all have available, it may actually work better. Or maybe they just have some techniques I don't know about, which is always possible. Also, snow definitely contains a lot of good nutrients, so no shame in adding snow to the high tunnels or whatever if you're bored in the winter and want to, some nice physical activity. I did that this season, in fact, just to get some exercise in the middle of the winter and get some snow off the sides of my tunnels, which was driving me crazy because it's starting to weigh them down quite a bit. But I don't see a lot of incentive in the market garden unless you can really nail down that production. I fear you will lose a little bit of seed and then have to wait to see what comes up. If it comes up spotty, then you would have to, like this weird stand of X crop in the way when you could just have like a perfect stand of it by planting it later. It may be more effective to warm that soil with the fleece you referenced and then plant. Of course, also don't feel like you can't experiment with these things. I just don't want to see anyone feeding expensive seeds to wildlife or letting them go to waste. Love the question though, and love the idea, Loke, and indeed keep them coming and report back to us from Sweden as your gardens come together. Otherwise, that's a wrap on this Wednesday. Don't forget, we at No-Till Growers are now officially a 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team over there at No-Till Growers for their support. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook by myself or The Seed Farmer by Dan Brisebois over at no-tillgrowers.com. That helps to support our work when you buy it from us. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of May, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Mimi and Radish Farmer, who are going to keep the story going for the week. All right, so the small group of people that were there at Kate's farm yesterday, enter the home and, to chat and figure out what in the world is going on. They show Kate this bizarre glowing devices in their hands, and Kate is confused because obviously Kate was aware of television. Kate, generally thought they were all much bigger than this. Nonetheless, it didn't seem like a super big surprise. So Kate served them all some lentil soup, just slamming lentil soup, as they all tried to figure out what was, what was happening. They all, albeit tired and confused, really enjoyed the soup. I mean, it was really good. And one of them even seemed to take a picture of the soup with the tiny device they had in their hand, which Kate found amusing. Then Kate asked, so where are you all from? And the group collectively were all from a walking tour based around the Ramones in New York City. The last thing that they remember before arriving in Kate's garden was the old place where the famous punk venue, CBGB's, used to be on the Bowery, and now it's like a John Varvatos or something. But all of a sudden, when they went to check this thing out, they were transported to Kate's garden. Then Kate realized exactly what had happened. And that's for tomorrow on Blast from the Past. It's going to be epic. All right. Thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you then for tomorrow, which may be Thursday. Nice.